They have tattoos, they spike their hair, and they listen to heavy metal.
They sound like punks, but don't judge them by their looks. They're part of a growing movement called Straight Edge. Steve Katz has more from tonight's Fox Files.
The music is loud and strong. You may not be able to understand the lyrics, but for a lot of kids, it's words they live by.
If you don't drink, you don't do drugs, you don't have promiscuous sex, you take care of one another.
This is not your typical punk rock band. The kids in the audience are not your typical teenagers. They call themselves Straight Edge, followers of a movement that began before many of these teens were born. Back in the early 80s, a punk rock group called Minor Threat came out with a song called Straight Edge that attacked drinking, drugs, and premarital sex. The song started a trend that eventually caught on with kids worldwide and helped launch several other bands that follow the straight edge style.
People are drawn to the music, then they look into the lyrics and go, you know, hey, I agree with this, or hey, I don't agree with this.
Andrew Klein is a member of a popular rock band called Strife. Andrew and every other member of his group claims to abstain from drinking, drugs, and sex. They tour around the world, attracting more young fans who join the straight edge movement. Like these teenagers in Illinois. They dye their hair, they tattoo and pierce their bodies. They look tough and rebellious. Most people were surprised to learn they lead a squeaky clean lifestyle.
I was tired of all this, drugs and alcohol and, destruction of, pointless weekends, doing nothing productive.
It has a lot of different meanings. It can be taken to different degrees. For some people, it's just not doing drugs. Other people can take it more extreme and not eat meat or have sex or do anything.
It may sound like a parent's dream come true, but the movement is not as pure as it appears. Sometimes straight edge ideals are taken to an extreme.
They all came up. One of them had a lead pipe, had a skateboard, they all started fighting.
This teenager was beaten up after a straight edge concert last week outside Washington, D.C. He says he was attacked by straight edge kids who didn't like the fact that he wasn't one of them.
These kids, they get into it, they see these bands on the news like Earth Crisis, they think it's all about, if this person's not like me at a show, we beat them up.
Police tell us fights break out all the time at these concerts. But many kids we talk to claim it's not the straight edgers causing the problems. They say it's other kids who go after them.
Don't they have warehouse things?
Brian Smith runs a record store that caters to straight edge bands. He says some violence is typical with heavy music fans, but it's an image straight edgers are trying to shake.
When you're a punk rocker, you're already sort of labeled as being really degenerate. I mean, all that your parents and your grandparents know about punk rock is learned from episodes of Quincy, where it's like people running around with spikes, stabbing each other, doing drugs, and you sort of have to go the opposite end of the spectrum to sort of show that you really are an intelligent being.
Whether or not the straight edge trend will last remains to be seen. Experts say peer pressure is toughest for teenagers, but these kids say staying away from sex, drugs, and alcohol is their own way of rebelling. They say it's more than just a trend, it's a way of life. Steve Katz, Fox News.
Still ahead on Fox News Chicago, Harry Volkman with the back half of the weekend weather.
And all is marvelous aboard the Russian space station now that Atlantis has arrived.
It's like you can feel it in your blood.
For most of us, the words are impossible to understand.
It means something, it says something. It actually has a meaning and it lives up to what it says.
It's music with a message for fans of the movement called Straight Edge.
Straight Edge is a lifetime commitment to never drink alcohol, smoke cigarettes, take illegal drugs for escapism.
It's a movement that has attracted tens of thousands of young people across the country. Its popularity spreading through recordings and amateur magazines, as well as the internet.
You take the name as like an oath.
The straight edge creed, no drugs.
I've been drug-free my whole life.
No alcohol.
I've never tasted alcohol my whole entire life.
No tobacco, and no exceptions.
If you don't want to be committed to this, then don't call yourself straight edge.
They usually favor baggy clothing or dyed hair and tattoos. Many are also strict vegetarians.
we're cool and we don't do drugs, and you can be cool and not do drugs too, you know?
There is a militant faction within the movement, anger that goes beyond the hardcore music, with scattered reports about attacks on those who use drugs or alcohol.
Straight edge isn't about, you know, if you get in my face and you do drugs, I'm going to beat you up. It's not what it's about.
Straight edge tends to attract youngsters who've seen the effects of drugs and alcohol.
I've seen the other side. I've seen like what drugs and alcohol can do to someone.
Everyone here obviously has faults. And being drug-free frees you to hold yourself accountable for those faults without drowning yourself in a glass or smoking a joint to calm yourself down.
Certainly a kid's identity, is forming at this time, and I think that if they can find something constructive and positive to join with, I think that's really important.
Experts who have studied teenage addiction have long believed that peer support is the key to keeping kids off drugs. And that's exactly what Straight Edge does, applying peer pressure to stay straight. Strength in numbers.